reflecting on past development of LLMs this past year moving forward. I don't know, anything from our last conversation, things you've been thinking about in terms of Gen AI development or LLM development, either you wish you said or that you've been thinking about over the time of the break. Sometimes those thoughts seem to bubble up despite our best efforts to relax. And sometimes it's fun when they come up. Has anything been bubbling over the past, bit of the holiday break?
I don't know. I've been seeing lots of stuff. There's more and more models. They're coming down in price. It seems to like other providers are catching up. Claude Sonnet is the favorite amongst developers for code generation and for maybe just things in general. There's the new ChatGPT Pro membership. It's $200 a month. I haven't paid this or really experienced the O3 model. I've been playing around a little bit with the O1 one, but I haven't seen. Thing I was trying yesterday is like, can it accurately count the letters and words yet?
Oh,
like how many R's are in the word strawberry? Or just like type a sentence and say how many E's are in this sentence. And ChatGPT, like GPT-4o cannot, but O1 can. So that was interesting. Has to think about it.
And O1 is the pro version?
O1 is the one where it thinks for a while before it answers, and it's like thinking about it, calculating, reticulating the vertices, and then it gives you an answer. It's basically like where it's doing chain of thought in the background, like think about this in depth before you respond.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to know.
And is passing all kinds of benchmarks. So it might be fun to, I don't know, get it for a month and play with it. But
yeah, no, 100%. It all moves so fast. It's hard to tell like what's the relative value of sticking into whatever it is that you're building or working on versus like trying this new thing. And I think, there definitely has to be some like high level strategy in terms of like changing something so fast or human minds can't even, generate enough expertise to understand how to use it. Because I'm sure you have experience or something I've seen even in just the realms of software development I've been into. It's just like you can solve a problem many different ways using many different stacks and technologies. You don't always need the newest anything in order to get the job done. And it's such a balance. It's such a balance to strike in this fast changing world.
Definitely like the AI augmented development or using tools like Cursor and things like GitHub Copilot, but Cursor, and then there's a new one called Windsurf that I haven't got a chance to try out yet. Maybe that looks they're all using the same models underneath, but they have like a different take on how they wrap it into an interface. And Cursor was definitely a big jump in productivity. And like so we were like we were estimating a project today, and we we're like comparing it to like a similar project from the past. We were thinking about it, and we we're like, but we didn't have Cursor yet when we built that one. Now we do.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of like productivity boost will that be? So I think because it's pretty significant. Like I have so much fun just doing development with Cursor sometimes that like I'll just skip lunch or something because I'm just like having too much fun, and I'm like, oh, this is not good. I'm like missing meals, but getting so much coding done.
Yeah. No, heck yes. Yeah, that's fun. I think, in the way that I think last year some people or, some of the pundits or some of the, like enterprise data people were like, oh, this is the year of like production for applications. I think we may sort of see some of it. Like we're literally experiencing this now on what you said, where now there's been tools that you've experimented with over the past year that you're like, this isn't our workflow or this is on the table, and it's not just experimental. It's like, we know how to use, it's been easy enough to adopt, it's been easy enough to use, and we're probably going to end up using it to some capacity in the real world. And so it's changed. The landscape of development has changed. AI, congratulations. We're living in the future at the moment.
It's definitely like it gets your gears turning with like a certain problem comes about, like how I could apply AI to this, and starting to get a sense of like what things are good at. Like one thing that's really good at is like making structured data out of unstructured data. So if you just have like a big blob of text and you want to like extract features from it, or like categorize it into one of these 10 things, it can do a pretty good job of that.
Sure.
It's also good at like, you have a giant library of, I don't know, articles or something like that, and you have an issue, and you need to find like, one of these articles is going to apply really well and help you solve your problem, and you can just type it in as like English, and use like vector search from embeddings and stuff generated by AI models to get the most relevant articles back. Google has this now a little bit too, but where like if you search something in Google, you'll get the AI result.
Yes.
But Perplexity is like the AI result is the main thing. And you can ask it English level questions. There's a pro plan of that too that I haven't tried yet. I've just been playing with the free plan, but free plan it's kind of like if you're using ChatGPT with search.
Sure.
If I want to like look up something on the internet, I'm starting to go to Perplexity some at the time instead of Google.
Every time because I have a paid, just the $20 ChatGPT account or whatever, and I use it a ton, especially in the work that I do for like academic tutoring and advising, of just like trying to organize probably like mid-level subject matter that I'm not in like day to day, as well as organizing thoughts, communication. And every time I use it, I think, wow, this is definitely not the best version of whatever it is that I'm using. Because sometimes I still hit latency issues. It won't, if I'm giving it different context documents, it's not really, it has limits it doesn't tell me about. It just throws me these errors and say, oh, we have no idea what to do. And then there's a bunch of speculation about what they mean. But, a couple of years ago, I had my own model on my computer, and so I could tell what was happening. So it really makes me wants me to move back to that model, but then I don't know, creates a better UI, so I don't have to, fiddle around too much. But it's just interesting to see. I have some friends that are doing some more local models, in that way. So I think I may be feeling a pull more toward, this is the year of doing some more local model, like local usage.
Yeah. What local models have you used? Or
I had tried to get Llama set up, and then I used just OpenAI's, I think like ChatGPT 3 when it came out. I was just pinging that API and then creating like a vector database and like Supabase, and I was uploading different things and creating some models based off of that. But now that I'm knowing a bit more about, I don't know, how to make one of these sausages, and then seeing, oh, these are tools that let you do monitoring, or these are some tools that let you do XYZ, especially with AWS. They're still not really doing what I'm thinking or doing what I imagine could be done. And then talking to those individuals at the companies that they're like, oh, wow, that would be a nice idea. And it's like, how have you not tried this out yet or heard about this before? There's no way this is a novel thought. So it'd be at least nice to template that out myself to see what's happening.
Any particular thing come to mind and like you're like,
so one thing I've been thinking about is the idea, like AWS, and I know you can set guardrails. You can flag certain phrases or certain sentiments, essentially, put them in a box, categorize them. But say you had a medical use case, and this wasn't a bot that was giving medical advice. It was kind of just like counseling or being like an empathetic listener in this way. Right. And it's like, we all can't have our medical professional with us all the time, or we all can't have our industry expert giving us advice, standing next to us all the time. But maybe when we do meet them at a regular cadence. But if I could chat with a bot for a specific reason, all that information can be logged and categorized and stored and organized to where it could provide a summary to my like industry professional that is trying to advise me, giving me context.
Oh yeah.
That's how I'm thinking about it. Making certain interactions between individuals more efficient. Interactions that are already supposed to happen, that are already happening, but making them just a tiny bit better. Well, one thing going into this next year is certainly certain, is that there's definitely a cohort of individuals that have been using AI-enabled tools more, and becoming familiar with it, learning more how to talk with them, and also in that Venn diagram of individuals, there's people who've been proven like, yes, these things can have like demonstratable value to my life or workflow in whatever region. And we've definitely seen it with Cursor and like the code-based use case. And I think that will just continue to spread out into other use cases.
Oh yeah, there was a really good article from Anthropic about agents and work versus workflows.
I've been hearing more and more about agents, and I can't necessarily tell if it's because have there been some like novel implementations or discoveries? Because several years ago, I remember agents had like a little moment, and I stopped sort of developing LLMs at that point. But I can't tell if it's just a news cycle change or if there's really some novel information about it. I need to spend time with that.
Yeah. This article here talks about kind of distinctions between workflows and agents. So it says workflows are systems where LLMs and tools are orchestrated through predefined code paths.
Mm-hmm.
And agents are more autonomous. Their LLMs dynamically direct their own process and tool usage, maintaining control over how they accomplish tasks.
Okay.
So it's cool to have that distinction. And there's a lot of tools now that are kind of more in this category, and where you can kind of like have a graph of, workflow steps.
Mm-hmm.
Like if email comes in, look at it and read it and decide if it's one of these three things. And then after that, take this action. And so you can do those kinds of things.
Okay, fantastic. And this is more of the example of the workflow use case rather than...
Yeah, different workflows. And they have different ones like, in this case, like do all three of these things and then aggregate the output of all of them and then do something. Yeah, this is kind of similar, but there's like an orchestrator in the front and a synthesizer in the back. These are all LLM calls too.
Okay.
There's one where it was like circular. Oh yeah. Evaluator optimizer, where you like make some call, it submits solution. There's a separate call which evaluates the output, like judges it, like, yes, this is good. Okay, go. But no, this is not good enough yet. Or like send it back with the feedback and go back and forth until this looks good and then send it out. But
okay, very nice. Because I was hearing about a paradigm of like LLM as judge and as a way to...
Yeah.
I heard it as a use case of how to, kind of get your, like how to control costs, like using the expensive LLM to judge the outputs of like the least expensive one. And you kind of force the least expensive one to make, do the bulk of the work. And then the more mature model is the one making the decision, kind of an evaluating. So
yeah. And like in prompt engineering, like in Data Pilot, we have that idea. Well, we haven't actually implemented LLM as judge. We just implemented like success criteria for the output. And then one of the ways you could like judge the success criteria of output is using another LLM call and asking it, does this look appropriate given X, Y, and Z? But this is like doing this not just in the prompt engineering, but like in the active live system, I guess.
Completely.
Versus like what we were thinking about with prompt engineering was like doing that kind of ahead of time, getting your prompt refined, you deploy that. There's nothing evaluating it in real time as in the system. But in this case, it would be like, yeah, do the evaluation in real time.
Okay. This reminds me, there's a question that came up over the over the holiday break, and I was like, oh, I need to ask Scott and Aron again about this. And it was about if you could share a little bit your lessons and learnings on like system prompt and system prompt design, a bit, and like how to think about it or how to approach about it. Because I was looking at the system prompt, I was like, whoa, this is huge, and I couldn't remember if this is following best practices, if there's any suggestions I could give, rather than having like a monster system.
We made a, we had a bug in our system for a little bit where the system prompt wasn't being sent as a system prompt. It was just being sent as like a user message. So yeah, one key thing is like actually send it as a system prompt. But even not sending it as a system prompt, it was working pretty well. So
There we go.
I've seen, I can't find it right now, but the default Claude Sonnet system prompt is actually fairly long and large. So just seeing that was helpful to know that like, okay, you can send it a pretty in-depth system prompt.
Fantastic.
Like you can give it a lot of context in the system prompt about like how the system should behave.
Sure. No, that's great. Okay, good to know. Then it seems like everything was working as it was supposed to, which is good. Let's see. Would you say that there's is there something that you're particularly interested to do related to LLM development, Gen AI development? This, I'd say this year, but like the year is literally just started. We got 329 days. How about this quarter, like in the next 3 months?
Tool use, we want to do more with that. So where you can say like in your prompt, you can give it tools that it can use to answer the question. So if you're like, how many holidays are in the calendar this year? By the way, you have a tool where you can query the calendar. Then it can make the decision like, I'm going to query the calendar, give me the results. And it can send back a message saying, I would like to use the tool. Here are my parameters based on what you said it would take. Then you can use that to go do something in your system, provide some more context back before it provides an actual answer to the user. So I don't know if you've ever used ChatGPT where you're like, you ask it about current events and then it searches the web.
Oh, yes.
That's like it's been provided like a web searching tool, and you can provide it with your own tools. Like if you're building an application for a business and you have a chatbot who can answer questions about that business, you can provide it tools like allow it to query that business's database for key data things. And then you can say, here's the schema and here's all the kinds of data that I have. And then it can like formulate queries because they know how to write SQL and it knows how to generate queries. So doing more things with that to build agentic workflows.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I'm interested in trying to experiment a bit with that, or just see it live and in the wild, because there's a lot of value in these tools being a good rep, like something I said before. I think there's value in it being like your 24/7 expert. Hey, Aron, good to see you. Hey.
You guys, how's it going?
Going well. I was just saying that, I think there is, and we've seen lots of value in LLM tools being like a good replacement or substitute for, I can't have my domain subject matter expert sitting next to me all the time, whether it's you're an engineer or a counselor or someone with domain specific knowledge. But I have access to them now and can use that to prime future conversations with my human expert. But then also being able to then query knowledge and organize knowledge with that same level of expertise for sorting later or for decisions later. And so the agentic applications are interesting and inspiring to me in that way.
Yeah.
I was just chatting with Scott Aron, asking him, like, not just what are you most interested in playing around with LLM applications like this next year, we got 329 days for the year. But this quarter, like, what have you been thinking about that seems worthwhile trying over the next, 60 to 90 days?
Oh, another one I could think of is a testing library recently came out where you can do end-to-end testing by writing plain English. Like, it should be able to log into the website and it should see that this thing is there. And it's using LLMs and something else called Playwright underneath to control the browser, and can potentially do like full end-to-end tests. So I'm interested in playing around with that.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that seems like a great idea for our own development efforts for sure, right? So you can build regression tests, and being natural language would be much easier to maintain those regression tests, right? because the LLM will take care of the abstractions, what it means to log in, right? And look for this widget. You don't have to tell it exactly where the widget is. You can just use inference for, yeah, which is great. So, Scott, have you made comments about workflows?
Yeah, we were just talking. I was talking a little bit about this Anthropic article where they kind of distinguish between workflows, which are kind of more on the rails, versus agentic or agents, which are supposed to be more autonomous, making their own decisions, where a workflow is kind of like a series of steps with, LLMs in some of those steps.
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Maybe they're making a decision of like which step to go to next.
That's actually what I've been experimenting in Data Pilot, where basically we give the Data Pilot a problem to solve relating to that data set, the entire data set. Describe, here are your tools, and without an explanation of any kind of methodology which you should use, actually have the AI, the LLM, determine the steps in the workflow, and then execute those, and then pass data along for each step. And that's right now, what's done so far in Data Pilot is linear, right? You basically have it analyze the request from the user, and then comes up with the linear steps that are not fully fleshed out, and then it executes those. What I'm interested in the experimenting with in the future is to have branched logic, right? Where that's where it gets a little bit interesting. Let's say if it doesn't work out this way, take this other possible route or other possible routes, and determine like where the endpoint is. And that's actually, I think, an exciting piece of next year or this year. I'm interested in exploring with, and it's fascinating actually just to see, to to give LLMs the describe the tools and capabilities, and have it choose its own adventure. So it's kind of very exciting,
Yeah.
right? To see and be able to like, I wonder like what it'd be like to optimize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see like what would that mean, to give it feedback to itself in order to make better workflows in the future.
Completely.
Well, in the context of Data Pilot, a little bit is to have it see how we can bring in data from many places for LLMs to actually interact with, and make the decisions also what disparate data sets to merge together and do things with. So I'm curious about that process. The other thing too is, right now I'm doing a lot of this stuff a little bit homeworld, right? There are exciting new things in Bedrock that actually does like, orchestration for you and for this. So I am looking forward to experimenting with those, right? To recognize the things I've done from scratch, but and also to use the optimized, hardened facilities.
Sure. No, I had there was a point I wanted to make, but I'm interested in one of the points you just brought up, Aron, which is asking a little bit like, what do you mean by like leveraging different data sources for your application? Are you talking about like multiple vector databases, or certain kinds of knowledge bases combined with vector databases, or how are you thinking about this? Because this is also something I've been thinking about in terms of, I can imagine a full system where there's multiple sets of information it needs to draw from and synthesize, and then sometimes reference. But then based on the user, maybe it's not referencing that information, so it has to change as well.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, you kind of gave the one of those exact scenarios over the break. I asked you, what can we do with this? And you said, well, let's make a I don't know, a project summary report. What goes into making such a report can be pretty wide depending on how large your organization is. And for us, it's like a combination of the time tracking system and maybe, status updates and other things like this.
Time tracking data from the time tracker database, Slack data from messages in Slack. Could be GitHub commit messages and the code itself.
Yep.
And if you're using Atlassian, it could be Jira, or if you're using GitHub projects. It could be whatever project management software you're using.
So it'd be interesting how to bring all those data sources, make them available to the LLM, tell the LLM, here are things you can do, right? You can make SQL queries, you can check this thing, you can do these things, and then have it decide like what to do in order to come up with the what's the product status? How do we, and that product status could be what we give to an end customer. So yeah, so getting it all together, getting the data from the different places, making it available in a format an LLM can understand, and then giving it the tools for which to analyze that data, and then create an output that everybody likes. The other thing too, Scott, that was really intriguing what you said is to put human in the loop as a first class citizen in this whole thing, right? That's actually very interesting to me also. How do you do that efficiently without making it burdensome for everybody involved?
Yeah, it could be, the endpoint of this workflow is send this human an email, or like it's not really the endpoint of the workflow, but it's like it's send this human an email, and then it provides them some links to like go and like either refine the output or approve or deny it. And then based on that input, then it continues on and does the rest of the workflow. You're like, let me redo it, or like update the report to be better based on your feedback, and then give it to you again, or let me go ahead and send it off to the customer.
Right. Yeah, does it answer your question?
Definitely. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm interested to hear from y'all what you been thinking of and thinking like what you're looking at trying next, and that sort of thing. I know a little bit Scott and I discussed, which I think is really, it was interesting to hear, was just that there is a project scoping y'all were doing, and you were saying, oh, in the past it's taken us this long, but now we have Cursor, so it changes that calculation. And that is an example, I think, that more people are having conversations like that.
Yes, I have been using Cursor to max speed, my own max speed, up to for about 4 months now, and I also had to use not Cursor, right? Straight up home roll development at max speed, and I've found it really does change your efficiency, right? I'm not gonna say it's like 100% better, faster. Like I can do, whereas I could do 10 lines of code, I can do 20. When you're going, yeah, I mean, I've probably 40% more productivity for what I'm saying. And then this is where I'm pushing it, where Cursor can't give me what I need as fast as I need it, and I also don't know how to make it go faster. About 40%.
Sure.
So does that translate to 40% cheaper projects for everybody? I'm not sure, but it definitely allows us to do things faster.
It allows us to do like the first iteration or the first or second iteration of things faster, and then it also accelerates how fast you're kind of like accumulating tech debt, though, because we're getting better at this, I think. Like, you can prompt it one way, there's like non-deterministic randomization in LLM. So if you might ask it to do something one way, like you might ask it to help you build a dialogue, for example. Then you might ask it to help you build another dialogue. Both dialogues look totally different.
Yeah, that sparks a very...
It's a real world use case.
real world problem, because what happens also is the temptation is to just have LLM copy paste that same code, right? Because like, oh, it just made it up like that. So you're not thinking about, well, what I actually need is a framework this thing. So the temptation to build up technical debt where you're relying on the code generation a little bit more than you would have normally, right? If you're just coding it by hand, you'd create a machine that creates that thing, right? Where the temptation is that to do less of that.
You can make that better. Like things like the system prompt, where every time you're asking it, you're giving it more context.
Mm-hmm.
With Cursor, for example, but this is not unique to Cursor, but for Cursor, you can have a Cursor rules file in your repository that's like, it's kind of like your system prompt, and you can explain all the rules of your project and like, what frameworks to use and what patterns to use.
And then
then
that's cool.
once you do that, you're getting a little bit more higher quality and consistent output because it's trying to obey those rules, because it's sending that along every time it, along with your, your basic questions, sending back, here are all the rules of the repository. Here's where everything is located. Here's the frameworks to use. And, here's what we like. Here's what we don't like. And you can refine that.
That's interesting. So like kind of like you can encode into those things the patterns and anti-patterns of the organization. Like
Do you have any more, either of you, any heuristics or processes of using cursor, I would say, because we're talking about it, but anything when using these code generation tools, how to limit your tech debt, how to really, unlock the true 40% productivity.
Basically tell it more of your, what's important to you. And you can do that with something like a system prompt or like a rules file, or like you could have like a whole markdown file that's like, everything that you would give to a new developer, like to onboard them on the project, and like include that as context whenever you send it, along with like related files that are like, so if like I'm making dialogue number 2, I can like mention dialogue number 1 and like make another one like that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I learned to do a lot of now. It's like recently I found that one of the really good things about Cursor is exactly that. Basically, you can say, I need to do X, Y, and Z, like at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, and then it just makes all the stuff for you, right? It's basically, if you give it, if you can pinpoint the exact things that are related to what you want to do that's new, that makes it go pretty quick. And refactoring also from that perspective is very, very useful.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Well, certainly, still, it's certainly needing to be the driver and not letting Cursor walk away in its own path. It seems like, the more user intervention, human intervention with these tools, the better the output.
Yeah, I feel like in all of these things, like the higher quality input you can give it, the better output you get. I guess it's like the not garbage in, not garbage out.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's all about learning how to give it more and better context.
Mm-hmm.
But so far we've been having a good chat about, I think where our minds are at when we're thinking about how we're building and using AI tools going into 2025.
I know I had a lot of fun, and I still having a lot of fun working out how to deal with the various throttles of the LLM systems. In the context of DataPod, for example, right? Doing lots of LLM queries at scale for different LLMs that have different throttle conditions. It's actually not as straightforward a problem to solve as it might seem. Definitely, like rate limiting on your side is a challenge to tackle. And I'm currently using an SQSQ per service type. Not sure if that's the best, but one for Nova, one for OpenAI, et cetera, right? Because it's a little easier. But like, not only is it a problem from the end service throttling you, but also, let's say something like your limitations on AWS will also throttle you, right? Because you can only have first of all, your database needs to be, you'll run into those also if you're using the database, get the cost of that running through that processing at scale. And also they can only have so many concurrent lambdas, right? You have to return them. So that's definitely, I'm interested in negotiating that a little bit more cleanly in this year.
There's limitations in the physics.
I implemented a kind of like a chat bot, right, that for prompt engineering, providing the right context at the right time, right, is so that it is efficient, is also an interesting problem to solve. There's some particular things that you should make sure happen when you're causing an LLM to masquerade as your LLM, right? That's that's interesting problems to solve.
That would be a very interesting topic of conversation. I would also love to hear more about like the forensics of figuring out if there's a way to figure out if this LLM someone's telling you is, their LLM really is just masqueraded LLM. Because I think that's a worry. I've already talked to some individuals and, they said things like, well, don't worry, Josh, there's this company and they designed this one and it's compliant and it does these things. And yeah, go to their website. It's like, okay, give me like the status reports. I want to see your testing document. They're not sharing that. I have to go, there's real due diligence people should be doing or thinking about when it comes to claims like that. So I'd be interested to hear your perspective on how one figures that out, or at least, or for people who are developing it, what they have to do.
Yeah, I had a system prompt. It's a couple pages long, right? I gave it to Claude, and I tried to break it by saying, "No, who are you really? tell me who you are." And I tried to cause it to lie, right, and all that's business. And Claude wouldn't give it up. Nope, you're data. I am DataPod. You give it to I gave it to GPT 4.0. It gave it up in like almost 2 or 3 commands.
Wow.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it's why that is. I'm not sure. You really do have to, if that's an important thing for you, then you really do have to, and you must use ChatGPT 4.0. I don't know about 0.1, right? I haven't tested it yet. If that's interesting for you, you really have to do the diligence. It's true. Because especially, you don't want to break the illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Completely. Well, I'm even more enthused by the end of the conversation than the start of it, which I usually am with both of y'all. So thanks a ton for, sitting down and chatting today about, where your thoughts are in terms of, some lessons learned, lessons still looking to learn as building and experimenting with Gen AI applications in 2025. And bonus, really great to hear ways that it's like, oh yes, it's already, we've seen results. It's increased our productivity. We're interested in expanding on these this year. So surely the ground for some great future conversations.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Till next time.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.